As politics continues to run on, we'll see as people get elected, some folks just aren't very happy about it. They still have to fight to keep the progress that we then made. In a radio interview on Friday, Wisconsin Assembly member Robin Vos accused the state Supreme Court Justice Janet Protasiewicz of, quote, prejudging the outcome of a potential case challenging the legality of Wisconsin's electoral maps and their gerrymandered maps. Let's get into the details of that. The Republican leader of Wisconsin's Assembly late last week threatened impeachment proceedings against that state Supreme Court justice if she doesn't recuse herself from cases involving Wisconsin's legislative maps, which GOP lawmakers have aggressively gerrymandered to give themselves what experts say is an illegal electoral advantage. Supreme Court justices in Wisconsin, of course, are elected, and she just won her term in April of this year. Let's check out that by what, 11 percentage points, so pretty devastatingly. But now they're looking to limit her position and what is it she can do in that. So the lawsuit that they put forward says this: the Campaign Legal Center, Law Forward, the Election Law Clinic at Harvard Law School, Stafford Rosenbaum, and Arnold and Porter argued in a petition filed with the Wisconsin Supreme Court earlier this month that the state's legislative maps are, quote, extreme partisan gerrymanders that violate multiple provisions of the Wisconsin Constitution. They're pointing out the truth here. The lawsuit demands a redrawing of legislative maps in special elections for state Senate seats that wouldn't otherwise be up for a re-election until 2026. Protasiewicz, whose election victory early this year ended conservatives' 15-year dominance in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, was critical of the state's maps during her campaign, calling them rigged and arguing that they do not reflect the people of this state. So what's the reality about these maps and her stances here and now them trying to silence her? Though the Wisconsin Constitution requires legislative districts to consist of a contiguous territory, many nonetheless contain sections of land that are not actually connected. Wisconsin's nationally peculiar practice of detached districts is cited as one of several alleged violations in a recent lawsuit seeking to strike down current Assembly and Senate districts and replace them before the 2024 election. So they're supposed to have all these district maps in one particular, they're supposed to touch at least, so you can have a reason for why it's there. But they keep breaking them up because it's more beneficial to them to retain power, despite the fact that they actually aren't getting the same numbers of votes in that manner. Let's look at this vote share versus some of the seats that they do get. So as you can see, Tony Evers, who had won, had 51.2% here, and the Republican behind him, 47.8%. Also in the state legislature, as you can see, Republicans have 64 in the Assembly to the 35 Democrats, despite the fact that the numbers that voted for them is so much different, as you can see from the number of Democratic voters versus Republican ones, because of the gerrymandered points. And they can still have some level of control without really winning to a high enough degree. So even if the Republican-controlled Wisconsin Senate doesn't ultimately succeed in convicting Protasiewicz, her impeachment in the Assembly would, under Wisconsin law, prevent her from hearing any cases until her acquittal. So if nothing else, David, they're at least delaying this long enough and keeping her from actually doing her job to a degree, because in America, that's democracy.
What an absolute sham. I mean, this is so ridiculous. I hate gerrymandering and the drawing of districts to so heavily favor one party or another. It's a problem. But the idea that, this is essentially a fake impeachment, right? Because even if they can't get through with the impeachment, well, they can sideline her. That's her strategy. They lost the election. She was elected to the state Supreme Court, but because they cannot accept election results, now they have to sideline her on all cases that are involving gerrymandering. It's absolutely ridiculous. And at a certain point, you'd like to think that even like the Wisconsin Republican Party would have some shame. Usually Midwesterners are a little bit more polite and earnest than other parts of the country. But no, in Wisconsin, they're just as Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it's crazy though. These are things that happen right in front of us in broad daylight. We've seen gerrymandering, we've seen challenges to it. In fact, gerrymandering happens on both sides of the aisle. But then whenever there's this lesser number of voters that actually have your back, and then the next step is then to just go forward with acting like you have some kind of mandate. Many times we talk about how Donald Trump is the one who lighted this fire under many Republicans to just kind of cheat their way through elections and power control. But they've been doing this for a while now, and maybe maybe their boldness has been growing since. But in this particular one, who pays attention to Wisconsin, in particular, this state Supreme Court justice and where they're standing with gerrymandering outside of folks of Wisconsin? It's kind of happening in broad daylight, but how much do we really pay close attention to it? Do you see major news networks talking about it? And that's not to criticize them. Where's the time to do that type of stuff? It's why they can see themselves doing this straightforward in front of everyone there.